Now, thousands of customers serviced by the Caroni water treatment plant were affected by a leaking 48-inch diameter transmission pipeline at the facility last Tuesday. Now, some customers in the north are still complaining they have not received a running supply of water in their taps for 7 days. And so joining us this morning to provide an update on this and other updates as it relates to the Water and Sewerage Authority, or Wasa, is the Minister of Public Utilities, Mr. Marvin Gonzalez. Minister, good morning.
Good morning, Kimberly. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and good morning to your colleagues in studio. It's always a pleasure to be here and to be given an opportunity to speak to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. And on this occasion, the citizens in North Trinidad, especially those communities who are still struggling to get their supply, and those would be communities like in Belmont, Gonzales, in Barbs, parts of Cocorite, because they are served on the extremities of the Caroni water treatment plant. The Caroni water
Minister, let's pause for a while. I don't want to get there yet because I want to go back a bit in terms of the reason for the leak. And I say that because we were getting a lot of releases coming out from Wasa when the leak happened, right? So first of all, we were told that the very next day at 4 p.m. it was going to be fixed. Then we got another update saying another time. And then we had the press conference on Friday. So I think one of the things that a lot of people were wondering is, why did it take so long in the first place to fix that transmission pipeline?
Okay, so it is a very complex repair job that Wasa had to undertake. The 48-inch pipeline was in fact an old iron line which was constructed in the late 1970s, early 80s when the plant was first constructed. Wasa no longer makes those types of pipes. Those pipes are no longer used in utility companies around the world. So therefore, the engineers had to devise a strategy as to how to repair this old concrete and cast line. The only solution that was available to the engineers was to utilize a 48-inch iron pipe to encast onto that concrete line, which obviously would be fraught with a lot of issues because it's putting iron into concrete. It is going to be very difficult. So they utilize a 48-inch iron pipe with flanges on both sides to put it onto or to fuse it onto that concrete line. And they utilize material, specially made material, that would cause the both material to at least hold together so that it can accommodate the amount of pressures and the volumes of water. So the engineers knew from the onset that it would have been a very difficult undertaking. The best option, obviously, would be to condemn the line and to construct a new line, which obviously would have taken over 7 days. And certainly, you cannot keep 250,000 customers without water for 7 days. So the best solution at the time was to utilize that interim measure, which is that 48-inch iron line, and cast it into the concrete line and to construct a thrust block around that line so that it can hold the pressures. So at least you can restore the supply of water to customers in the shortest time possible, despite the challenges.
Despite the challenges,
all right, whilst we immediately undertook the need to construct that new or that bypass line.
So then is this a temporary measure
It had to be a temporary measure because it would be quite risky because the entire line is compromised. It is a concrete line that is no longer utilized in the authority or anywhere around the world. And the better solution is to construct a new bypass line. Incidentally, the south trunk line, there is a bypass line which was constructed many years ago. Unfortunately, the same was not done for North Trinidad, because had this incident occurred on the south trunk line, that bypass line could have been utilized. So it was observed that a bypass line was not constructed for North Trinidad, and I immediately gave the instruction for a bypass line to be constructed so that we can eventually condemn this old line so we can have more resilience and consistency to remove the possibility of this happening again. So it's quite unfortunate. Because the Caroni water treatment plant, let me just give you an idea. It is the largest water treatment plant in the entire Caribbean, producing 75 imperial million gallons of water per day, serving customers in Central Trinidad and South Trinidad and North Trinidad, 500,000 customers served by that plant. It is the largest plant. So when things go wrong, it is quite possible for there to be widespread inconvenience, especially to those customers who live on the extremities, like in Belmont, as you're hearing, in St. Barb's, in Cokery. They live on the extremity of that Caroni system. That water has to be boosted to Valsain A, Valsain B. It has to go to the El Socorro booster. It has to go up to the Picton Reservoir, Picton 1, Picton 2, then to the Laventil Reservoir, send it down gravity. Then it goes to some boosters there, then to go up to some of the hills in St. Barb's. Anything that goes wrong within that system, any pump that loses efficiency, then the customers on the extremities will feel the pressure. It takes a lot of time, sometimes 72 hours, for that entire system to be fully charged in order to get the requisite pressures to go up to some of the apartments, like, for example, in Powder Magazines, to go up to some of the hilly terrain in Waterhole, Cokerit, to go up to some of the higher terrain in St. Barb's and Gonzales.
Well, then, Minister, my question would be, because I know that the customers are watching now, when can they get water? Because it's been a week.
It is a week, and that is very, very unfortunate.
Yeah.
So what we have done last week was that we locked off some of the areas that got a consistent supply since the plant came back into operation last week, Friday. So we shut off some of the water we had to sacrifice in order to get the requisite pressures to send water to some of the areas that have not yet received water, that we've just mentioned in St. Barb's and Gonzales and in Cokery. So Wasa is doing that currently, and customers would expect to see a supply of water during the course of the day later on this evening, because they are re-engineering the network to get the requisite pressures to supply to some of those hard-hit areas. We've also recognized some flaws in the engineering design, especially of that Laventil system. So that is one of the blessings that came out of this crisis. We were able to identify some flaws in how that whole network is designed. So we are also going to re-engineer that network to provide a main transmission system towards the Picton Reservoir, so that it can fill at get the necessary tank height, so that you don't have to wait for 2 days and 3 days for pressures to build for people in St. Barb's, Gonzales, and some of the areas in East Port of Spain to get water. And we've decided that we're going to undertake this within the next month or two, so that these customers will start seeing a more consistent supply of water.
Now, Minister, let's go back to the pipeline, because you say that that iron had to be fitted into the concrete, is it, right?
Yes.
But it's a temporary measure.
Yes.
So then in the next 2-3 months, is it going to go down again? I mean, how soon? Because you said that you give the okay for the bypass line to be constructed, but how soon can we see that being on stream?
They have started the construction of that line on the weekend. NGC is also providing some really good strategic support for us. The 48-inch line was lines owned by NGC with no use at this point in time, and those lines were provided by the NGC, so they are providing the technological support and all of the other support. We expect that within the next 7 days, that line will be completed.
And then will you transfer onto that line?
Then we are going to transfer onto that line.
Yes.
We're going to keep the old pipe line in the event that something happened. It can be used as a sort of backup measure, but it will no longer be used because it is a bit compromised. So we're going to transition over into the new line. Once it is completed within the next 7 days, it will require 24-hour shutdown for that interconnection to be completed. Of course, we will notify the customers in North Trinidad so that they can, back up on their supply, engage in water conservation, in order to allow for that interconnectivity to take place. So we expect that to be completed within the next 7 days.
Minister, I don't want us to spend too long on this point, but customers have also been complaining about that the truck-borne water supply, right? That some people have been talking about the exorbitant fees. I know we've spoken about private versus what Wasa is able to offer, but people have said that they've called the hotlines that have been provided, and sometimes they get a response that they can't get water within 2-3 days.
Yes, and that is unfortunate. When you have a disruption of this nature, affecting 250,000 customers, Kimberly, you would imagine, we don't have trucks in Trinidad. Let us be very frank. We don't have trucks in Trinidad, private and Wasa trucks, to supply 250,000 affected customers. So what Wasa did was that we prioritized some key institutions like the Mount Hope Medical Complex, the Dialysis Center, the airport. This occurred in the midst of CARICOM activities. And you would recognize that none of the CARICOM activities have been impacted. The Mount Hope Hospital did not go into crisis. The airport was not shut down. And a lot of other key institutions around Port of Spain and environment were not shut down because we have now had to engage in our emergency system in order to allow some of these key institutions to have a supply of water during the day. And in the evening time, we would provide to some of our domestic customers. It was quite unfortunate that given the extent of the inconvenience, that it was not possible to provide water to 250,000 customers. And the call center being overwhelmed by so many calls, a lot of the customers were not able to get access. So lessons learned, it is very difficult in scenarios like that. But with respect to the private contractors who charge exorbitant fees, the water provided by Wasa was free. But obviously, if you're not getting onto Wasa, people will call private operators. And it is very unfortunate that private operators utilize an emergency like that to charge that kind of money. It tells you something about us as a country, that you utilize a crisis situation to charge people $1,500 for an important commodity as water. I think we can do better as a country.
Yeah. Minister, so then are people back to a regular schedule? Because you say some people had to be sacrificed a bit to give those on the extremities. So are we back to our regular water schedule now?
I would say by the middle of this week or Thursday, we should be back to some level of normalcy, because the focus at this point in time is that 10% or 15% of customers that are yet experiencing some challenges because of the location and the need to get the requisite pressures to get the water up to that point. I would say by tomorrow or Wednesday, those customers should be given their supply of water, and by Thursday, the entire system will be normalized and all customers will return to their normal schedule.
Yeah. Let's look at some of the priorities, Minister, of Wasa. I know that this one obviously took preference because a lot of customers were affected. But tell us the plans for Wasa. Let's give a 3-month before the budget, of course, comes around.
Within the next 3 months, there are going to be a lot of activities in the Water and Sewerage Authority. We have undertaken a robust pipeline replacement program all over Trinidad and Tobago, Northwest, Northeast, Central, South, and in Tobago. You know, one of the challenges faced by Wasa as any other utility company, you have high leakage pipelines, leaks appearing in many parts of the road, and based on the statistics and the analysis, we can tell those pipelines that are prone to leakage. And what we have decided to do over the last 3 to 4 months is to remove those pipelines and have them replaced by new pipelines, and moving towards the end of this financial year, in the next 2 months, we will continue our drive to replace those high leakage pipelines all over Trinidad and Tobago. Under the Community Water Improvement Program, we are completing a number of projects all over Trinidad and Tobago. We'll talk about Parliament, but Parliament was one of those projects that we completed a couple of weeks ago. Today, we are going to be around 10 o'clock today, we are going to be commissioning the Golden Grove booster station, and a number of wells that we brought into operation in that Piaco area that resulted in improved water supply to areas in 5 Rivers, in Aruca, in Maloney, and in that community of Orupun Gardens. We re-engineered the network in Orupun Gardens. The 4,000 people who live in Orupun Gardens can tell you that they now have access to 24/7 water by the re-engineering of that system. So that booster station is going to be commissioned at 10 o'clock today, as well as a number of booster stations that we have constructed all over Trinidad and Tobago. We will be commissioning them over the next 2 to 3 months. There are 3 wells in the Freeport area that I turned the sword about 2 months ago, and yesterday I get an update. Those wells are producing over the 3 wells, 1 million gallons of water in total. Those wells will come into operation by September, and that will result in an improvement in the supply of water to the people of Freeport, 23 or 25,000 people who are getting water once every 9 days. And with that 1 million gallons of water, these people will now have access to 24/3 or 24/4 supply of water.
Minister, was it the Freeport area where you mentioned that you were getting some problems with landowners who weren't allowing the authority to come into their properties to develop the water supply? It wasn't Freeport?
It wasn't in Freeport. We didn't have any problem. I'm trying to remember what incident was that.
Was it in South? I remember that when we had discussed it a few weeks ago, there was some residents who wasn't allowing the authority to come in, so it was holding up that sort of distribution of water.
Oh, I'm trying to remember what exactly it is, but it was not in the Freeport area.
Okay, so Freeport is good.
Freeport is very good because those 3 wells wells will come into operation and in September, and that will impact the lives of 23 or 24,000 people in that catchment area. We commenced a 7.2 kilometer, 42-inch pipeline project from Signal Hill, Tobago to Crown Point 2 months ago. And I gave the country an undertaking that this project is going to be completed in 45 days. I am proud to say that we stuck within schedule, and next week, Tuesday, that 7.2 kilometer pipeline, 42-inch pipeline, is going to be commissioned, and which will result in improved supply of water to the people of Southwest Tobago, 15,000 people. It is the first time in the history of the Water and Sewerage Authority that a 7.2-inch kilometer pipeline costing $10 million was constructed and commissioned in 45 days. The Hillsborough Dam, a project that was on the cards for 30 years, being spoken about in Tobago. We deserted the Hillsborough Dam in 1 year. It came under budget by $10 million, and within a period of time of 80 days in excess. That project, you can speak to any average Tobagonian, and they will tell you for 30 years that project was discussed. No progress ever made, and we were able to do that within a short period of time, resulting in that dam going back to its original design capacity of millions of gallons of water, to the extent that in that zone we didn't have to impose water restrictions within the dry season. So a number of things are happening, and moving towards the end of this year, we are going to be drilling new wells in the Mayaro area, because there are some areas in Mayaro that are having some serious problems. In the Palo Seco area, Ikaka, Cedros, and in the Sangre Grande area, Manzanilla, and some of those areas, we will be undertaking a number of well drilling work to improve the supply of water in these areas.
Minister, let's go to Parliament. Tell us about Parliament.
So, I born and grew up in Parliament. And there's an area in Parliament that never had access to water. As a matter of fact, I can tell you, I had the experience of carrying water, a bucket on your head, going to a spring to fetch water. My uncle had a donkey. We went to this river that most young people growing up in Parliament would know that river, because that was the only source of water in the Parliament area. So when I became Minister of Public Utilities, understanding the importance of rivers in community and understanding the importance of localizing your source of water, I asked for an analysis to be done on that river to determine the feasibility of turning it into a main water source for the people of Parliament. And when the analysis was done in that river, I was told that it can provide up to 800,000 gallons of water per day, thereby giving the people of Upper Parliament who never had access to water 24/7 water, and rolling back water from a well from Maraval that was pumped to different stages to the top of the hill. That water can now be diverted to some of the areas that didn't have a consistent supply of water. So the project took about a year. We did the river intake and a storage system to the top of Parliament, 185,000 gallons of water. So the water is extracted from the river, it is treated, it is pumped to main storage to the top of the hill by the Lavigi site. Right. It is stored, and then it is released through gravity flow into the community, thereby resulting in over 4,000 people in Parliament having access to a 24/7 water or supply of water, and a consistent supply of water. And the water from the well 7 in Maraval, which was pumped all the way up, there's no need to pump that water all the way up, so the people in Lower Parliament can now have access to a consistent supply of water. It is one of the most brilliant projects that we've done this year. And for me personally, who went to that river as a young boy to bathe, to wash clothes with my parents and my family, being able to turn that water into a major water source to bring water to the homes of people, it gives me a sense of pride. And I want to congratulate all the workers of Wasa who worked night and day, weekends, to make that a reality, to really touch the lives of simple people in that community.
Minister, I just received a report that I think some people from the Mount Hope Hospital had to be evacuated because there was a shutdown. I think the generator took a bit longer to kick back up, and so some people had to be evacuated. Can you provide an update on that one?
No, well, it's not a TNTEC issue. It's an internal electrical problem, transformer problem. I think that the hospital was having, and as a contingency measure, some of the critically ill patients
had to be
not evacuated but transferred
to another one.
the Arima hospital,
Yes.
so that they can treat with that internal electrical problem.
Okay, but everything is good at Mount
everything is
now?
good, I'm told. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
good. And Minister, final thoughts. I mean, thank you so much for coming this morning.
Yes.
Final thoughts.
Let me tell you this. This crisis, you know, I have been very consistent in my criticism of the authority when criticism is necessary and due. I've been very frank with the people of Trinidad and Tobago with respect to the issue of water. But it disheartened me and it pained me to see the unfair criticisms coming from members of the public to Wasa workers for an incident that they did not cause. I saw workers that went day and night without sleep, did not see their families, did not have a shower, because they stayed there to ensure that this is repaired so that the people can have a supply of water. I stayed up 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning with these workers, giving them the support because they were overwhelmed by the situation and they stuck to the task. And the level of criticism and the memes and the misinformation that was spread on social media from citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, my position is that we can do better as a country. And the TV6 ran a poll on Friday asking customers, should you be compensated by Wasa for this? Which is suggesting that Wasa did something wrong, that you are victims of what Wasa did to you and you should claim compensation. And following up on that, I saw a headline in the Daily Express on Sunday, another Wasa disaster. It's very unfortunate that an incident that was not caused by Wasa, that sprung these workers into emergency mode, worked night and day to ensure that there's a return of supply of water within a 3-day period. I was told that when Severn Trent was here, an incident like that occurred on the South Line, and it took 16 days for that to be done. This was done in 3 days. And I think, as Minister of Public Utilities, on behalf of the government of Trinidad and Tobago, I want to commend the Wasa workers for sticking to the task, ensuring that our public institutions remain intact and ensuring that the level of inconvenience suffered by the population was reduced to 3 days. And I want to commend all of them for the work that they have done and to let them know, do not be disheartened by the unfair criticism that came from members of the public and members of the media.
Thank you so much, Minister, for joining us this morning. You heard it from the Minister. We can do better as a society and as a country. So let me thank the Minister of Public Utilities, Mr. Marvin Gonzalez. And we look forward to that 10 a.m. booster station launch, as you mentioned, this morning. You're on the Now Morning Show. We're going to take a break and be right back. Stay with us.